welcome to this tutorial on how to get your clothing from Marvelous Designer, your garments, your creations, whatever, how to get it from Marvelous Designer over to Unreal. Okay, so your Metahuman clothing, your garments from Marvelous Designer that has been sized to the Metahuman over to Unreal. Now, what inspired me to make this video was the creation of this avatar tool set, which I have on ArtStation. There's a link below. It's a set of all 18 body shapes of the Metahuman body types. It is just the shape, and I've converted them into an avatar in Marvelous Designer format with the .abt. So what this will help people do, if you are trying to create clothes for the Metahuman and you need to quickly get the size, that's what this is here for. So this has all the presets of all the body sizes. So you just need to find out what size your Metahuman is, and then you put your clothes on that body, on that avatar. This video is going to show you how to get back into Unreal. But the other thing that this set is handy for is if you are creating clothes for character and you want to sell it on the marketplace. If you need to create clothes for the Metahuman, I'm not sure if they want you to, but you may need to create it for all 18 body types. Having them all ready in one piece is kind of, it's a time saver. I needed to create this tool set, and I thought, well, let me share this with everybody. So besides creating the tool set, I also added in these bounding volumes and arrangement points to, well, really all you add is the bounding volumes, right, for the characters. Basically, these are cylinders. If you look down here, it's a shape. So this is in the avatar editor. You have your avatar here, and then you can go into avatar editor, and then you have these kind of points, these bounding volumes, they're called, and arrangement points. And what they are cylinders that you can, or you have other shapes, cuboids as well, that you can place around your avatar, and they're presets for placement of the garment. So for example, the collar is always going to be around the neck, so you have one that goes right around the neck, and that one is here, neck right, neck left. So there's a right side and a left side, and you can have it aligned to that. There's also, I think, a neck base, or neck front, neck collar. So these are different points around the arrangement, around the bounding volume. These are points actually on the volume. So I'm not going to get into how to make this too much or anything like that. The point is that these avatar presets have them set up. And when you have that set up, it's not only easier for you to quickly iterate, but also if you have your garment has been assigned. So if we select any piece on our garment and you scroll down to the bottom, the arrangement point, if it has been assigned these same points, then we can use the Marvelous Designer's new feature called the retarget draping. And what this allows us to do is Marvelous will automatically resize our garment to fit that avatar. Now, I made another video which showcases this. Yeah, I just used, some of the garments from that come with Marvelous, but like I said, in order for it to work, every piece should be assigned an arrangement point. It will automatically transform and refit to that avatar. You might need to finesse it a bit, and also how the arrangement points are set and all that stuff really matters as well. But I showcase how I was able to take a dress and move it onto like 2 or 3 different, back and forth from one avatar to another, from one Metahuman shape, so the largest Metahuman to the skinniest Metahuman, and go back and forth. So it's really helpful if you're trying to create outfit for a metahuman that you'd want to sell on the marketplace, because I do believe you need to have it ready for all 18 body types. That aside, I'm here with a few things about how your garment should be prepared before you go into Unreal. First things first is your UVs need to be set up. And I did not make this garment. This was a very talented artist. The link will be in the description. I purchased this on ArtStation from a costume creator. I do make my own garments in Marvelous Designer, but I also do development and sculpting and a ton of other stuff. So a lot of times I don't have time to really spend the time to make a full detailed garment unless that's my project. I will use these other garments and, but I've edited this here in Marvelous. So one of the main things I did was, I removed a few extra bits and pieces that maybe I feel might be too much for Unreal. I also rearranged the patterns so that they were more in a square shape. And what that'll help us do is when we're using, when we're working with Unreal, or, we can, when we're doing our UVs, when we're changing our UVs, you can go fit to reset to 2D arrangement. When you do that, it will set it like this. But what's great is now I can go fit to 0 to 1, whether it doesn't really matter, but too much in this case. But there, it's fitted back into a square shape. Now I'm going to undo that and do it again because I had it already set up. So you need to have everything in this square. It has to be. One thing that's really tricky to watch out for, which I see in a lot of garments, is the trims will be right here at the 0 space. So they'll be like centered right there. And if they're in this side or that side or that side, Unreal can freak out. Make sure you select these bits and bring them into this square. They need to be in this one square. You can go over to this square and this square and this square all the way up. You can keep going, but then you're working with what's called UDIMs. You need to set up a few things in Unreal before you start working with UDIMs. You can do that. You also have to understand that every UDIM you have will generate a whole new set of texture sets. So it can, a garment, if broken up into UDIMs, can get quite big, quite fast. That brings me over to texture sets, UVs, 0 to 1. Then that brings us to materials. So you might want to look at this and this. That's a bit too much, right? I may want to consolidate these materials. I will also want to rename them. Okay, so M underscore, and then get rid of any spaces, because this will be the material slot and how the materials are created when you bring it over into Unreal. This will create materials, and the materials will be named this. And this is Unreal's material naming convention. So it doesn't mean your slots have to be named that, but the materials it creates. Now, the thing we're going to note with the materials is that there's no textures really, except for this normal map. It's just colors and values. So the reflection, the roughness, the metalness have values of numbers. So we don't need any of that detail. We're going to recreate that you can recreate that in Unreal. So maybe, you might want to combine these two, combine the sole and the belt together because they're both black. And in this case, these are Kung Fu shoes. So the sole would actually probably be the same material as the belt. Some of this stuff, it'll generate more texture sets than you need. Anyways, that's that. Materials. We're ready to export. So we go File, Export, FBX, Porting issues. Here as our export settings. We can create these if we want. We don't need to, but generally I'll just have the diffuse and normal map selected. You can go as high as you want. I think 8192, 2048 to 4096 is usually good enough, even for like cinematic. 4096 would be, obviously the higher the better, but like I said, you have to think about every texture is going to be 4K or 8K. And so that's each map, diffuse map, normal map. And if you have these other ones as maps, because if you're working with substance painter materials and you've brought them in, they may have metalness map or roughness map. Also, if you're baking textures, you can bake your textures here. They may have all these converted into a map, but we don't need those extra textures. We're just going to use value, just like they're using value here. So we say, okay, select all avatars, decheck that, single object, welded, thin, unified UV coordinates, and then choose your maps and set your size. So hit OK, and then while we're there, we're going to go back into Unreal. So I've been playing around here. When you're working with Metahuman in Unreal, you'll go to the bridge, you'll grab a Metahuman preset. Maybe you have your own Metahuman preset. You'll download that Metahuman preset. So I have this one already downloaded, and I can just say add, and it'll create this folder here and add all these other parts to the. I'm just going to note that one thing that's important when you're creating these metahumans is that they have no clothes. You're going to need to create them like this. Now, I usually will keep the shoes on. In this particular case, you can create them with clothing, and we can rig the shirt to the shirt and the pants to the pants. But then you have to start to think about collisions, and then you also have to start to think about how the blueprint controller is working. It becomes a lot more complicated when you do this way. In this case, we just have one mesh. It's a body mesh right here. And this is the mesh that we're going to rig this character that we just exported from Marvelous. Just for now. And then what we're going to do is get this body from the mesh, and we're going to send it over to Blender. So you have your blueprint here. So when you downloaded your Metahuman, make a folder with the Metahuman's name exactly. Now, like I said, I created this Metahuman with no clothes. All I did is just, go into the Metahuman. I didn't change any of his face or anything like that. I just went to the clothing part. I said clothes, shirt none, pants none. I kept the shoes on, so it kept the feet body part here. And these are all different skeletal meshes. Technically, we could, start to put clothing on top of this. But again, we have to think about collisions. Will the clothes, will the skin start to come through? And that will happen with, when your character is moving or animated. So you have to really be careful. So in this case, I just chose kind of like the easiest way that you could get your character clothed with the Metahuman. And that way would be with just using the full body. Here we have the full body mesh. And if we hit this little folder there, that'll take us to that character. And then if you look down the chain of the folders, you'll see male, medium, normal weight, which is his body type, body shape, and then it'll have this part. But usually what I like to export, and a lot of times what we'll use, is if we go up to the upper level, select this Metahumans folder, and then type preview. And if you look in the Unreal documentation, it'll show that this is these are like the shared common assets that all Metahumans have. So it doesn't matter what one you made, it's still going to create this folder and create these same things, and they'll all kind of draw from that in the background. So if we look there, we've got our preview mesh, and this is actually the skeleton, and that's the skeleton. And we're basically going to copy the blend shapes, or not the blend shapes, but the weight paints, the skinning detail of this rig, and then we're going to put it on our clothed rig, and then that'll allow us to have something like this. Now in this case, I have these characters hooked up to the third person player controller. So if I press play and I want to showcase something, when I press play, you'll see when we're rigging this, if you notice, there's a little like kind of cut in his leg. So when we transfer these weights, they don't get transferred perfectly. We're going to need to do some editing. There's a lot of back and forth. Understand that. Now, we've got our character. We've got our preview mesh. We need to export that. So go to Asset Actions, Export. Just to showcase and not overwrite anything. The main thing to uncheck is level of detail. So check that to false. And then just hit export. In Blender, we're going to go over there and we're going to go to import FBX. I actually have a clean one here. So this is one that I brought together from before. And then I'm going to go here and import FBX. There we go. Okay, so this is what we just exported. There's no rig on it. And if we look at the Metahuman and we look just at the skeleton that we just imported, we'll see the structure. So this is a null, and it's basically down here, and that's basically that root kind of component that we saw in the other in this one here. So if I go up here, we have this root that starts, that tells the character where the ground is. From there, everything branches off, and that's this whole skeleton chain here. Exact same thing, right? So this is now the mesh, the actual mesh. And on the mesh, we'll notice we have these things. And if I look over into weight paint mode, you can see we've got these different, if I go to the vertex properties, or the mesh data properties, I should say, I can kind of go up and I can use the arrow keys to just cycle through different areas. And so what these are vertex groups, and they're basically just selection sets where we've painted over the vertices and we've added colors, and we've determined that blue means, this dark blue means no influence, and red means full influence. That means 100%. If that bone moves, those vertices will move with that bone. So you can see which ones I'm selecting here. So we have the spine. And so like where it's red is the most influence, and where it's, as it goes from red to blue, it's varying degrees of influence. And so that's a value between 0 and 1. 0 and 1, so 0 being blue and 1 being red. And we paint this onto the mesh, and it gets stored away inside the mesh data. Each vertices will hold all this stuff about the color and tons of stuff, tons of extra information. And that's what these vertex groups are. So they're kind of like selection sets. So when you're creating a rig from scratch, you have to actually first create the skeleton inside the mesh, and then start to paint the one by one. What we're going to do is we're going to copy these from here onto our mesh here. So how we will do that is we will, it's real simple. First, we'll go out of weight paint mode. We'll go into object mode. We're going to select our clothing. We're going to go to our modifiers tab, add modifiers, deform, armature. And then in there, under object, we're going to select root, which is this one. It's the only other rig in the scene. So if you have other rigs, it'll show other, in your scene, it'll show you other options, but you got to make sure you're selecting the right one. But, in this case, I don't think you should be trying to have other stuff in your Blender scene. I would, just open a new Blender scene just to do this. So what we need to do now is parent this mesh, this clothing, to this root. So we're going to hold it down, hold down the Shift key. So click and drag your mesh, holding down the Shift key in the outliner, and then also hold down Alt and drag it over the name root. And now that's put that mesh at the same level as the body. Okay? And the mesh also has an armature, and that armature is pointing to this armature object. Now we need to get these vertex groups, these selections of vertices, merged from here onto here. And it's really super easy. All we have to do is select our clothing, then select the preview mesh of that you got from Unreal, and then go over to the weight paint mode. Okay, so you should see your clothing turn blue, and then you're going to go to weights, transfer weights, and when you do that, now mine did it automatically, but I'm going to go by name. I'm going to make sure source layer is done by name. Okay, it's really important that you do that because these names are what the skeleton in Unreal reads, and that's what it's going to be. Those are the vertex groups it's going to be looking for, right? So you need it to grab it by name. And if you notice, like how the influence then changed right there. So now we're good to go. Well, technically no. So what I said before about this, the issues that we had here with the tearing, it comes directly from this. So when this is copying those weights, it's kind of like projecting it from outside and just kind of projecting it back down. So it's just transferring it, it's coming outside the normals of the whole mesh. And so it's projecting through, we can see we've got the thigh is influencing both, but that's fine. But we don't want these harsh edges. So you're going to want to go through and blur this out. Do it, this is really the art of rigging is all here. Okay. So it's all about weight painting. And I mean, obviously there's other things really, with tool building and set driven keys and all this other stuff that we can get into. But the main art is how you paint these weights and how the mesh warps. So that's where morph targets come in, things like that. So I would definitely go through. Don't just accept what came out of the box, so I would definitely go through and edit this, maybe average it, turn down the strength a little bit and just kind of go through and smooth things out. You won't get as many errors as you would say here. So maybe I don't want to change the influence strength, but I can take the radius down and then blur. And there we are. We can go on for hours, but we're not going to. We're going to get this mesh out of here and into Unreal. So one thing to think about, though, is these feet are sticking through. And that was done intentionally because I know I'm not going to use the body anymore. So I could technically just go like this, select that body, hide the clothing, go through, go to edit mode, and X. Whoops. X vertices. Okay. And I mean, we could go more. I could go maybe minus, control minus, maybe just get the waist or whatever. X vertices, done. And then we come back out of edit mode, turn on our mesh, turn on the ghost, turn off ghost mode. And now we still have hands. So because we've taken the body, we look at the structure of that, it's got the hands too. So if we delete the hands, there's no hands for our metahuman. So we're going to need to keep these meshes together. And sometimes I might parent this to here, or even join it, you know, like that. And then actually join the mesh, but I don't want to mess up the UVs and these to have different UV sets. So when we go into Unreal, we can actually reattach the skin to, you know, the skin materials to those parts. So now we're pretty much ready to go. You select the top part, that, you know, the top null, empty, right click, select hierarchy. So that selects everything, all the meshes in your thing. And then you just go export FPX. Very important, selected objects. Sometimes I even like to turn this. And then path mode, copy. You can also put this to embed if you want. Important, usually from Blender to Unreal. The smoothing type should be set to face. And then armature, let's turn off add leaf bones. We don't want Blender adding any extra bones to our skeleton. So we're going to go to desktop and then just save. And I'm calling it SK so it understands that it's a skeletal mesh. And I'm going to hit export. And then in here, in Unreal, I started to put like the outfits in this test. And if I go to the desktop and I bring my person in, it sees it as a previous skeleton. So it's going to try to copy that, but you don't need to have it like this. It recognizes from the last one that I did. So you can create new materials, depending, also create new instance materials, but generally you don't need to mess with anything. Now, if this shows up as empty, that's okay too. Okay, so skin geometry and skinning weights. So import all, and then it's going to take a second. And there might be some problems with naming. So because there's Marvelous Designers generated so many textures. Oh, failed to merge bones. Okay, yeah. It shouldn't. It's because of yeah. So it's because, yeah. So that's a big old mess. It's because it was trying to look at that other one. So we can do here, just delete that. And now it's none. Okay, so That's the way it should be, because it's you're not trying to reference from another skeleton in this case. So import all. And so sometimes if you're, if it recognizes, oh, it's like, that's the same skeleton. Maybe, is this a child, object of that one, or is this the parent? So it's going to try to use that other skeleton as like a base, and it always seems to have problems. So there's some texture name clash. So, again, Marvelous tends to create all these extra materials for objects. Looks like the rig is messed up. Yeah, that's definitely not good. That's why. Okay, let's try this again. So what's going on here? Well, I think because I accidentally parented the clothing to the body, and Blender is working in an OpenGL workspace, and Unreal is working in a DirectX workspace. So their axes are on different alignments. They call it right hand, left hand. So if you point the fingers, with your right hand and your left hand, one represents, to the OpenGL. So that's typically what's the conversion is. The X needs to be rotated on 90. So that means that what happened was I accidentally parented this to the body, but actually it should be the other way around. And then hold down your Alt so that this is the actual main object. So that's why it had a lot of errors and whatnot. So let's go here, select all these, delete, force delete those. Then now I'm going to select hierarchy, and then export FBX. And I'm going to rewrite over that one. Okay, so make sure that those options are still selected, and then hit export. Now in my desktop, I can grab that, and this time everything should work out. There it is. Like I said, how many texture sets? So basically this is one texture for every material slot. Now I can delete these and then just point the material to one set. So this is all created by Marvelous. Be mindful of how your materials are being generated down the chain. Okay, so it's created basically a set for every material that it found, and some of the materials like the belt and the boots and like the edging, we don't need like 15 copies of the same because they're all on one. But that's, a little bit of cleanup and something you'll need to do. And like I said, think about your materials from Marvelous side and how they're named and all of that. Then I'm actually working on a little plugin that will, I can go through and just edit all these and give them all names, correct naming conventions. We can hit save all. And now we can pretty much grab any metahuman and put this outfit just like we've done here. This will fit with anyone. One thing to check, to notate, if you go into the skeletal mesh, see this M body synthesize and how it's gray because there was no texture. But if we go here, we scroll down and we see some other ones with the same exact name, and those are actually the real ones. So once I add that, the hands are back to normal. And they're also rigged, so, they're part of the metahuman. So all you have to do now is just attach this skeletal mesh to a metahuman blueprint. So in this case, maybe I'll grab, Sadil's one. So I'll go to that one, and maybe I'll change it to the other synthesized body skin. And then we can go to this blueprint of the no clothes. So like I said, this is the way that you should prepare a full body mesh for a full body clothing, outfit, which I would say is the easiest and the first step you should go through. Don't try to overcomplicate things, because there's a lot to think about with collisions and things like that. And, there's new tools coming out. So there's Chaos Cloth. There's some new integrations between Marvelous and Unreal. So think about that. So I would just start out with full body, and then as you get to know more about how your clothing works and what your needs are, then you can start to create more individual pieces for like the shirt or trousers or whatever. So we can go here, we select the body, and then right here in the skeletal mesh, I can just search for one of my pieces. So let's just move me up here, say SK, and you can see them all right here, all the different models that I created. So if I go SK, or I think it's Kung Fu, Kung Fu Person V7. There we go. And there's our clothes. Now, remember I was talking about those values in Marvelous Designer, like the roughness and the metallic? Well, I would definitely want to go through this, and we can go back to there, go into here, and then it'll show you all your materials for material slots. I'll start to go there and start to edit these, okay? So uniform front, this is the main one. Maybe I'll go here and go here, and I'll hold down the 1 key and left click, and roughness to 0? No, roughness to 0.9, and then hit apply, save. And if I go into Sadil's character, now the clothes look more, it looks a little bit closer to what you'd expect for that type of material. Right, but you'll need to go through and edit those materials. There's a lot more we can go over, a lot of things we can do, even to change the colors or to make them, I can mask even out based on the color here and pipe that out to different things and create parameters that allow me to adjust the color or the material. There's a lot of things you can do with this material. I would also take a look at the materials that come with the clothed Metahuman. They also have material presets, and sometimes these textures that we're generating can be integrated into those master materials. So that's it. So that's sort of the whole process. The main thing is to focus on is make sure your UV maps are set in Marvelous. Make sure your materials have good names. Export. Once you have the Marvelous Designer outfit fit to the Metahuman body type, then we go over to Blender, where we import the Metahuman base mesh, the preview mesh from the common assets. In the common assets, the preview, we use that rig, and then we merge it by using the weight transfer mode. So we select our clothing, then we shift select the preview mesh, and we go over to weight paint mode. First select the clothes, then select the body, Then go into weight paint mode. You'll see your clothing. Go transfer weights, which is in the weights, and then remember to change the source by name. And then it will copy those weights over to your mesh. You need to make sure you have your armature added. Then you can parent your mesh clothing to the root skeleton, and then you go out of weight paint mode and you're ready to export. Click on the null, select hierarchy, export FBX. Don't forget to change your geometry face settings, smoothing, and also to turn off those add leaf bones. Then when you bring it into Unreal, you just need to start hooking things up, really, in the end. Tweak some of the materials, and then if you need to change the mesh, if you do change the skinning, you can re-import this, or you can re-import with a new file. I would say re-import, and then say you found, oh, I need to change this, the weights on this. So I'll go back to Blender, I'll edit my weights, I'll save the file, save it to over the one I was working on from Unreal, and then re-import that same mesh. So it'll be looking at where you originally got it from, right? The physics asset, where it originally got the asset from, source file, right? So if you change that source file, you can re-import so you don't need to go through and re-update the materials and re-import texture assets and things like that. So you can just kind of go back and forth until you get your character where you want it. All right, so I hope that's helpful. I hope people will check out my Metahuman presets for Marvelous Designer. It's a great tool to save people time if you're creating garments for the whole Metahuman set, or if you just need to quickly get a size. There you go. You've got it already set up in Marvelous with all the arrangement points and bounding volumes. And then I hope that this tutorial will help people understand about the whole rigging process and how not to get too frustrated when things don't work out. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of things you might forget. All right? So thanks a lot, and I'll catch you on the flip side.